Right, we're going to go straight into tonight's event because I think everybody's going to find it really useful tonight. There's going to be some really lovely, lively debate and discussion. So I'm going to start by introducing all our panellists. We've got Dr. Kamani Lahusi, who's going to be speaking to us on African history. We've got Esther Stanford-Jose, talking about reparations, and we've also got Dr. Mark Ledwidge, who will be speaking about the healing process and moving forward. The format for today is you're going to have the speakers who are going to do a short presentation, and then between 7:30 and 8:20 we're going to have an audience question participation time, and then 8:20 to 8:30 we'll be doing the closing remarks. I'm sure that the speakers that are going to be around will be happy to discuss anything with you after the event. But can I just say that Esther Stanford-Jose has to leave the building at 8:20 to get her train back to London. So, Mark Ledwidge, who's going to speak to us regarding the healing. Dr. Ledwidge is a published academic. He's an avid supporter of activities designed to encourage educational development at all levels of society. Committed to community empowerment, Mark left school without any viable qualifications and was driven to fulfil his intellectual potential, attaining a doctorate promoting of the importance of hard work, but above all, self-belief. A participant in community projects such as mentoring schemes, workshops, lectures and talks on Black history, individual responsibility and self-actualisation. Mark serves as a mentor and teacher to young African American males in New York, and in the UK Mark has set up and delivered a range of events and programmes to promote his belief that every child or adult deserves the right to a quality education. At university, Dr. Ledwidge successfully delivered a fast-track course aimed at young adults without the conventional qualifications to access a university education. His proudest achievements relate to inspiring those who lack the confidence to pursue their goals. Dr. Mark Ledwidge.
Welcome. You found yourself in a peaceful place, and we wish for you blessings without number. I'm going to dedicate my conversation today to three individuals. First, Brother Minister Malcolm X, who's truly known as Brother Omawale, which he said was, when he was given that name in Nigeria, means the son who returns home. He said that was the proudest moment in his life. The first to Brother Omawale, because it was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X that really helped to wake me up. Second, to Fanny Luhema, who taught two things: that we should never forget where we came from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. And thirdly, to my grandfather, because without my grandfather I wouldn't be here. My grandfather, I learned, when I finally got to meet him, that he'd always wanted to go to Africa. And I was able to fulfill that for my grandfather. And that means everything. Because sometimes you are here to fulfill a destiny that was left behind by previous generations. So we have to understand this is a sacred moment. We have the opportunity as Africans today to speak truth to power. And we have to understand that when we speak about this issue, we are speaking first and foremost for the voiceless, for those people whose bones still litter the Atlantic Ocean, for those people who died on the plantations in the Caribbean, in Brazil, and in the United States of America. So I speak for my ancestry, but ultimately I speak for myself, because my ancestry and myself are interconnected. And I speak as one who was born an African, but didn't even know it. Didn't know it because my parents didn't know it, and their parents didn't know it, and their parents, possibly before them, didn't know it. But there is no such thing as chance. What we have to understand is that the system of enslavement was created, maintained by people and institutions who benefited from the enslavement of Africans. If you don't start from that position, then you're in a lot of trouble. Because really, what are we going to talk about? It was no accident that African people were enslaved. It was a calculated plan. And given that it was a calculated plan, and given that enslavement lasted at least 300 to 400 years, and of course we say that it continues, then we have to approach it from that serious standpoint. Now, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is healing, but I'm not really going to give you solutions today, because in the short time period I have, it's not really about solutions. It's about just pricking the mind to think in a different way, to look at an alternative projection. Number one, my first premise is that Africans have never healed from what you call slavery. They never healed from it. Why? Because it's never been dealt with. Firstly, many Africans or people of African descent within the diaspora don't know they're African. To the extent that sometimes when you speak and you say that you're a person of African descent to other people who are in fact people of African descent, they will get angry with you. They will tell you about, no, I'm British, or I'm Jamaican, I'm Guyanese, I'm Trinidadian, etc. Everything but African. To the point where when you talk to people who believe they're from the West Indies, often they will boast about their lineage, but they don't boast about the lineage coming from Africa. They boast about the lineage, well, we have Scottish blood, we have Irish blood, we have English blood, because there is a disconnect with what you call Africa. And I don't say that as a means of trying to harm anyone else. I'm here to speak the truth. But often, if you speak the truth, you're the one who's perceived as having a problem. Imagine if you went to a doctor and the doctor told you that you were sick, and you got up and you slapped the doctor in the face. The doctor said, well, why did you do that? He said, well, you told me something I didn't want to hear. The person who will tell you the truth of African history is often the person that will get the slap in the face. They will often be perceived as the problem, because what they're doing is going against the grain of the social order. It's like swimming upstream. To do this, you need to develop a superior muscle system in order to make it. So what is the point that I'm saying here? Number one, we've had no true healing. Because first of all, many of us don't actually know what happened during the system of enslavement. We don't understand the cultural dislocation. We don't understand the physical and psychological trauma imposed on you to turn you from Ifateo to Sandra. You don't understand that during the Ma'afa, we lost our names, our language, our religion, our culture, and our concept of God. And we have done very little to repair that damage. We have issues with even bringing up the subject. We don't like to bring up the subject. I'm talking about people of African descent. Equally, people of European descent don't necessarily like to talk about it, because it is also an issue. The issue is prickling beneath the surface. So as I walk the streets of Liverpool and I look at the grandeur that is Liverpool, understand that there couldn't be that grandeur if there wasn't a system of enslavement. This city was nothing but a small fishing village before they got involved in the transatlantic system of enslavement. Now, if you go to Manchester, you say, what has Manchester got to do with the system of transatlantic system of enslavement? What was the principal product? Cotton, mills. Where did you get the cotton from? The South in America, and those other plantations where you had cotton. So understand that when you, as a person of African descent, are in Manchester or in Liverpool, you're actually in cities that were based on the enslavement. In other words, the wealth that was generated was based on the enslavement of your ancestors. Yes. Believe it or not, it's true. So I'm not talking to you about a history that is past, I'm talking to you about a history that is present. But then what is your definition of history? Africans don't define history in a linear way. They define history on the circle in the sense that history involves the past, the present, and the future, and they become one. So what you call the past is connected to the present and also ultimately to your future. So if I don't know about the past, then I cannot actually realize my future, because my past or my understanding of it will determine where I see myself in the present and also determine how I project myself outwardly into the future. And that is why among the Akan you have the Dinka symbol, the Sankofa bird, which looks back on its own tail. But actually it's a circular thing when you look at it, because the circle is history. And what I'm saying here, that history is like memory. History is a sacred thing. Somebody who has no memory is somebody who can't identify who they truly are. Someone that has amnesia is somebody who doesn't know who they are. Well, during the Ma'afa, Africans were forced into a very calculated and systematic conditioning process, that was designed to remove their historical memory. Your name is part of your memory. It's part of your cultural memory bank. It allows you to connect to your ancestors. So now, as I walk around with the name Ledwidge, it's not my name. It does not connect me. So someone says, well, what difference does it make? I'll tell you what difference it makes. It means you can't connect yourself to where your ancestors came from. So now you're walking around as a disembodied man who doesn't know who he is. That is the meaning of giving people slave names. And when I say slave names, not because our ancestors were slaves, but because the idea was to create a slave, but it never actually succeeded. One of the reasons why the Ma'afa moved to a different phase, which we call colonization, was because of the revolts, especially the Haitian Revolution, but also the revolts in Brazil, where they had Palmeiras, which was a kingdom that lasted for about 100 years, where they escaped Africans, went and made their own authentic kingdom. So we have to understand that the history that we don't know is a history that in many ways is killing us today. That there's a connection to the young men who roam the streets, not understanding who they are and why they're angry, because we haven't explained to them what happened. But we haven't explained it because many of us don't know. And many of us don't care to know. Why don't we care to know? Because if we cared to know, then we would have to develop a knowledge of self. What is a knowledge of self? The knowledge of self is the recognition of who I am. But who you are is not a static thing. There are three factors that you need to pay attention to: potentiality, actuality, and reality. Potentiality means what you could be. Actuality is what you are now, and reality is when you realize your true self, your true potential. Where are you on that scale? Where are you on that scale? Are you at potential? Are you actual? Are you at reality? So my number one premise here is that if you don't know yourself, you can't even have this conversation. The reason why Sister Esther was talking in such a significant way about the question of identity is because people of African descent coming from the Caribbean have not even unified correctly. Let's say we don't have any, but we have not unified correctly around our Africanness. If you still think that you're Jamaican, and that means that you can't connect with somebody from Barbados, or you can't connect with somebody from Trinidad, or you can't connect with an African American, then you are out of your mind. Because let's take, for example, the Haitian Revolution. There was a priest called Bookman who was on the island of Jamaica. He was shipped from Jamaica to Haiti because he was a so-called troublemaker. Bookman knew he was an African. And so the people in Haiti were his brothers and sisters. That is why many black people use the term brother and sister. but we don't know why.